too.
not
You can
gonna
We're
see yourself in
everywhere.
both places. Slide this just a
It's
little.
not just the Pastords anymore.
No, today we have a special guest,
Marie?
Griffith,
Yes.
who is a pastored-in-law and a pastored in training. That, as we've said, makes you a pit.
Yes.
The pastored in training.
Really in training?
Well,
I mean,
I
I'm
don't know.
kind of
You're
already pastoring, but
Well,
That's true.
absolutely.
Well, you are. It's an internship all along. And when do you graduate?
well, from one program, I graduate in May of 2023.
Ah, nothing this year though.
No.
Wow, that's a real downer. So you're really not accomplishing anything this
No.
year.
Nothing this
2022,
year.
the lost year.
2023 is the year that I graduate from one of the programs.
Okay. All right. So we know you want to talk football right off the bat.
Well, that was the thing, right? I just this would just be the whole episode, right?
We don't ever talk about what
Well,
we're going to talk
That's
about.
fine.
What?
I just don't
ahead
have
of
a lot to
time.
add.
But Marie did
I do
say
know that Tennessee is number 11, and the only reason I know that is because you said that at lunch on Sunday.
yes, Tennessee's number 11. No, we couldn't make the top 10. I mean, because this could be the high point of the season. Let's face it, because we play Florida this week.
But
What's,
if
what's Florida ranked?
20th.
Oh, well,
And we
They'll
have
have
them
a
at home.
chance.
So we should beat them. But we probably won't.
so,
But-
if you're not big into the football thing, like what pick a sport.
Pick a sport.
something, or pick something fun you'd like to just talk about
Do
it
you
rather
do
than
pickleball?
football.
I mean, there would be no. Oh, well,
Pickleball?
backpacking.
Backpacking. Let's talk
Oh,
backpacking.
Backpacking or hiking or Spartan racing. You know, I
Yes.
used to do
What
that.
racing?
Spartan racing.
What the-
I've actually thought about
What's a
starting a group.
She's
and
done a
leading people.
trifecta, Rod.
I don't know what a Spartan racing is.
It's obstacle racing.
So you run and you climb over
and
obstacles.
great, you know, metaphor for
Spartan
life,
racing.
Yeah.
right?
It's a whole thing.
It is a metaphor. Well, no, like they have the. Well,
You run part. of
we
the
used to
time
call it an
walk,
obstacle
and then-
course. Now we call it Spartan racing.
Well, I mean, there's other obstacle courses. There's the Tough Mudder.
Tough Mudder, which is a much tougher obstacle course.
Well,
I'm familiar with-
because it shocks you does not mean it's
Anything that gives you
tough.
40,000
I mean,
volts and you're having to swim underwater. Are you swimming underwater in the Spartan race?
well, you don't have to swim underwater.
Under
but you
barbed
do have
wire?
To go underwater under a wall.
Yeah. Is
which
it got
freaks some
18
people
inches of
out.
ice on the top of the water?
Spartan racing.
Yeah.
Now, do you do
Thing.
this as a team? Is this?
I
I know
did
nothing
it as
about.
a team, but you can do it individual. Yeah, and Bruce,
Are there-
to correct you, I did 2 years of trifectas.
2 years. Wow. That's very impressive. So
Wait. Are the trifectas? Is that like the biking, racing, swimming?
no,
you
Marie
do
will-
3 different races. One is a sprint, which is 3 to 5 miles. One is a super,
You sprint
which
3
is,
to 5 miles.
Well,
I
and
just
then
died
the,
a little
The
inside.
super can be from 5 to 8 miles, which was 9
Sprinting?
miles actually. No, the super. Then the beast can be anywhere from 12 to 14 miles.
So you're running as fast as you can. Now, if you're doing it with a team, you're only going to go team-wise as fast as the slowest person.
Well,
What?
yeah, but I mean, unless you make an agreement that you can be left behind.
Did you make an agreement with someone that they could be left behind?
We did.
The really competitive groups. I'm
I
sorry.
mean, on Board Me Wild trips, it's no one left behind. I've had people begging and pleading with me
No.
to leave them behind, and I
No,
never.
no.
But
Wait,
you're
so that-
saying you made a prenuptial sort of thing. We will leave you behind at a certain point.
Well, I mean,
what part of
some
team don't
people-
you understand?
I know,
Some
that's-
people do are like, no, please just go on. But then, so,
I don't think that's what team means. There's no I in team.
but
There's
we
no
only-
leave
family-
someone behind in team.
We only did that once, and then we decided not to do that.
Well, sure, because
The
that
person was
that
so
person
demoralized.
felt terrible. Bless their hearts.
I used to be a part of the
No,
team,
She
but
wasn't
they left me.
alone. She
Oh, it was
totally,
a she, huh?
Totally alone. She was with one other person.
She was with the other person that came in last, and their team left
Their
them.
team.
They actually made their
It
own.
was
new
nice
team.
when we had a team, wasn't it?
You remember when we had a team like an hour ago when we started this thing? We had a team.
So the best one was where we did the Beast. It was in Tampa, Florida, and we all crossed the finish line because we did not leave anybody
Wait.
behind.
So Tampa, when did you do this?
2017 or 18. Oh yeah, I've been to we did one in Atlanta, we did one in South Carolina,
I didn't know
Tampa.
any of this.
Yes.
Yeah, it's pretty impressive.
Spartan racing.
Yeah. It's great. It's a great it's fabulous.
So I should probably do one of those at some point, just so I could be
Well,
cool like
he was
you.
supposed to, but then what was wrong with your shoulder was out dislocated or something.
Oh, that's right. That was after I had
Some
four.
mini excuse.
I got 4 tears in my shoulder
Yes.
after I fell in the ice and snow
And then you had shingles.
when it was -5 degrees, and then I had shingles.
Some other flimsy excuse.
I forget 2018 was a rugged year for my body. It was.
Was that
2018? That's where I ripped my
Okay.
shoulder.
Yeah.
I got shingles and probably started COVID worldwide.
well, so I did it in 2017 and 2018. But I did my first race in 2016. I caught the bug. And I was just like, oh my gosh, this is the greatest thing ever.
That is fun, though.
Interesting.
Ryan and Whitney did one race with us because they thought,
That's
what are
our
these ladies that are in their
niece
40s
and
and
They're
nephew-in-law.
50s.
cutesy little races.
Yeah, they're so cute. Look at them doing their races. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And
They
the-
couldn't keep up with you, could they?
Ryan thought he was going to die. I had to carry Whitney's bucket for her.
Wait.
After I
You
carried
carry a
mine,
5-pound bucket of
I
concrete.
said, Whitney, I went down
And
and I
run
said,
with
do
it.
you need me to carry your bucket? She said, yeah, can you do that? And I'm like, yes, I can.
So you were carrying 2?
Well, no, I
Buckets of
carried
concrete?
mine up. Then I went and got her bucket.
Okay, so team was in play there.
Yes, it was.
Yeah.
No, actually,
Marie's
we
a-
left Ryan and Whitney behind.
We've left more people behind.
I don't.
There's a
They-
disturbing
they
trend
told us
here.
to.
Let's talk about what team actually is for just a minute, because I think there's a
I'm not sure I want to be on your team.
there's individual and there's team, but they're not the same thing.
Well, if you're gonna win, you can't have team. You gotta have
As famously said
all
by
for me.
Well, no, I mean,
was
really,
it Terrell Owens? Well, they ain't no we either.
the whole thing about that, it was, see, we were training, but Ryan and Whitney, or Ryan in particular, they thought, well, we don't need to train because we're young.
Okay.
Well, let me tell you what happened, because I took Ryan and Whitney on a week-long trip in the Sierras where we had to hike 40 miles, and guess what? We didn't leave them
I
behind.
know, yeah, they told me, but
We brought them
Whitney
with us the whole
thought-
way.
Whitney shared with me, I don't know if she shared this with you, that first day she was really questioning her entire existence. Because
Well,
she was like,
yeah.
why did I do this? And I have 6 more days left.
When you start out on a big uphill and make a 2,000-foot climb coming straight
It's
out of the
awful.
van,
I know.
everyone's like, they question. It's an existential question. Why am I alive? Why am I here?
Will I remain living?
No, and it's not just why did I volunteer to do this? That would be one thing. It's
Yeah.
why did I pay money
Yes. Why did I pay money
to do
to
this?
do this?
Yeah.
It's awful.
Hey, so guess where I'm leaving for tomorrow on a jet
The
plane
Sierras.
at 6 a.m. But not just the Sierras.
Yeah.
I'm
Mount-
headed Mount Whitney, the tallest
Oh my
mountain
gosh.
in the
You know what?
contiguous
I
United
would
States.
probably be questioning my existence.
Well, yes, at 13,500 feet, and you've still got 1,000 feet to go.
How high will you actually climb?
We'll go to 14,500 feet. Wow. And Whitney moves up and down. So sometimes it's 496 and sometimes it's 505. It's California. Things move out there. It's so yeah, I ought to look up right now what it is.
It's like
If I had
3
my
miles
phone, I
above
would.
sea level. Yeah, that.
So what's interesting, it's almost like God scooped up some earth there, because the lowest point in the contiguous United States is several miles away, Death Valley.
Death Valley.
You can
Oh,
see it from
wow.
you can
Yeah.
see it from Whitney.
Really?
So it's this wild thing about
did
yeah,
not
most people
know
don't know that. So it can be 20, it'll probably be 20 degrees when we get to the top. And it might be 104 in Death Valley, literally a few miles away, which is just that whole thing's hilarious. So it is like something just got scooped up. Let's make a really big thing here and a really low
Really low
thing
thing.
here.
So how many are going?
It's 4 of us, which is such a good trip.
I
And
know,
all
that's-
3 are veterans.
Okay, so who?
So
do
it
I know
makes,
any
so I've
of
got Ken, I've got Daryl, and I've got Herbie.
them? Oh my god!
I mean, that's gonna be such a
great
fun trip. It
group.
is.
I've hiked with
I-
all of them.
I
You have
know
hiked
none
with
of
all
these
of them?
people.
Well, and all of them are
I
really
don't feel like part of the team.
they're
right now.
strong hikers.
And you know what? If I was
You
on the
still
team,
need to
I
go on a
would
trip
not
with me.
leave anybody behind. Now, y'all
We might leave
me
you behind just to teach you what it feels like, Miss. I'm no team player.
All righty.
Yes, I was gonna go on that trip at one point,
I
and
know.
then the pandemic happened.
Yes, it did. And then last year we were going to do it. It was the makeup hike, and then the fires happened. The fires at Sequoia. So
Oh, that's right.
I'm having to do it as a free, non-commercial hike this year because I can't get you only get permits every 2 years. So I don't have a permit for it. So this is just a free hike with buddies, which is great.
Really?
Yeah.
Okay, so what is this in
You
comparison
can still go.
to Peru?
I
mean the
Elevation?
altitude. Yes.
Well, Peru, you go up to 13,800 feet, almost the same
So
amount.
close.
So
Okay.
Dead Woman's Pass, which I almost had two women almost died there.
'Cause they were left behind.
I will be questioning my existence.
We did not. Yes, you will be questioning your existence. It is such a long day. So it compares similarly. I would say, well, Peru will be easier because you have a porter that's carrying your stuff.
Yes.
So Whitney's harder because you're carrying a full backpack,
Yeah.
and you're having to carry a week's worth of food, and that week's worth of food has to fit in a 2.5 pound canister, bear canister. So, I mean, literally, some of the guys are like, I can't get it all in there. I'm like, yeah, you're gonna have to break it down, smash it. I said, you can't do individual meals on trips like this, and you have to do bulk. So you just put 15 tortillas in the bottom, and you just put all of your meat in one section, all your condiments in one section, all of your vegetables in one section, and you just force it in there.
Wow.
And then your
But-
can goes in your backpack.
And that goes in your
Can?
backpack. Oh, it's huge. I mean, it's that tall and that wide. So I can get that and my tent next to it, and then we build up and around from there. Yeah, it's going to be interesting. But I love it. I've done this 6 times. I love this. This is the prettiest long trail I've ever done, other than the John Muir Trail, which is spectacular, 200 and something miles. This is 72 miles over 7 days, so you're averaging about 10 miles a day. And in the middle of it, you have the natural hot springs, which is so fun because you are worn out. You've been going uphill, downhill, up in for 3.5 days, and then you get there and it's like, oh, and you literally sit in this concrete tub that the Civilian Conservation Corps years ago put out there, and it's like, I mean, you're in the middle of nowhere. I remember the first time I was there, I was in the hot tub. It was like 11 o'clock at night, completely dark. It's a hot tub. It's even crazy to say that out in the middle of nowhere. But you got the Kern Canyon River, Whitewater, running right next to you, and you're looking up these canyon walls that are several thousand feet high on both sides.
And the stars have got to be ridiculous.
The stars were amazing. And I'm like, I am out here 37 miles from the nearest road right now. 37 miles. It's the furthest point on the trip.
That's cool.
Either way, east or west, because you hike right over the Great Western Divide. So on night 2, we will be camped at Precipice Lake at 10,400 feet. And they
Wow.
call it Precipice Lake because it's a body of water that's on a cliff. And you camp on that cliff. And literally, Roger, you wake up the next morning, the clouds are below you. Just a blanket of,
wow.
it's the most spectacular, to me, it's the most spectacular campsite in America. Of course, I haven't been to every, obviously, national park in America, but it's my favorite. So I'm looking forward to this trip, and I need the break.
Is this the first time for the other guys?
First time for the other guys.
Okay, that's gonna be fabulous.
Yeah, so Daryl has done Whitney from the east side, where you just
Okay.
go up 8,000 feet and come down in a 24-hour period. We're doing it the easier way, where you do it over 7 days. So you're slowly gaining elevation, losing, gaining, losing, gaining, losing. The last night will be at Guitar Lake, which is amazing. It literally is shaped like a guitar. It's bizarre. All granite. And then you get up around 5 a.m. while it's dark the next morning, and you start your summit bid. Because you have to be off the mountain before noon, because you have lightning storms that come in and all that kind of stuff. And the weather's going to be spectacular. Highs in the 60s, lows in the 20s. I'm like, that's
So why couldn't you get a permit of timing or?
to get commercial permits, you have to get them 2 years out.
Oh,
So yeah, I wasn't able to do that for not for a makeup hike, because I had the permit for last year.
But it didn't get, they didn't.
There was no carryover. They didn't
Nope.
like, hey, here's a makeup one, which is fine. But all that to say, it's going to be a great trip, and I'm looking forward to it. So, what are we going to talk about today, Marie? I know we've had a lot of fun now, but the people want to know what's on Pastor Marie's mind.
Let's see. Well, I will talk about the class I'm in that's really
Ooh,
rocking
tell-
the world.
I want to know.
So this is the program Christian Spiritual Formation and Leadership that I'm taking at Friends University.
Okay.
So our class now is Formation Through Struggle.
Let's pick another topic.
Yeah, that's great.
Try me on another one,
Talk
Bob.
about and now I mean though, all these things we've been talking about
Yeah,
is sort of a
it's adversity, it's struggle. So what are you learning about struggle? And you're probably going to have to speak up. I realize your voice is much quieter than
It
ours.
is true, yes.
okay.
Project, Marie, project.
Well, I mean, I'm just reading all
Nope,
kinds
more.
of things that are I'm reading
Louder.
Gerald May wrote a book called The Dark Night of the Soul.
Yep. Also wrote A Grace Disguised.
Yes, I'm reading that. Wow.
Wow. This is a man who lost 3 generations of women in his life, his daughter, his wife, and his mother in the same car accident. He
Wasn't that
knows about
Sitzer?
grief. That's Sitzer.
Okay.
That's what she said.
No, what?
She said May.
Yeah.
Oh,
Gerald May is the one, but he
That's
references
different.
that story. That's
you're
odd.
right.
It's
That's
different,
Gerald's.
Sitzer, who had the
There's a couple of Geralds that have gone through adversity and struggle that wrote some very good things about it. Thank you, Roger, for rebuking me on the show.
Well, I'm glad. Yeah,
I'm just
glad
saving you from a lengthy description of someone that Marie wasn't referencing at all.
It's a good point.
Yes.
But she was going with it. I like it. Yes, Bruce, whatever you say.
But I'm going to
Dark Night of the
speak.
Soul. We're also reading. I know
The
people,
comments are going crazy over there.
Desmond Tutu.
Heard of him? Yes.
He and his daughter wrote a book on forgiveness. I'm reading that.
So you're tackling all the hard topics at once.
Tim Keller, I think, just had a book that's come out on forgiveness.
I'm reading Pete Scazzero's Emotionally Healthy Discipleship.
Okay.
What's another difficult one? They're all difficult. Of course, Divine Conspiracy, Dallas Willard, we're still reading in some of that. All kinds of things.
So what are you learning? I mean, what's your big takeaway right now?
I'm just reading. I'm not really learning anything.
Okay, good.
I'm just kidding.
Well, I'm going back to something I did a week ago, but the very first thing you
Did you do it
said,
by yourself or in team?
oh, I never leave you behind.
Mm-mm.
No, I was thinking about, if you start talking about the discipleship through suffering, I think about even the parallels between and climbing.
Yes.
So
Exactly.
so these beautiful things that you're talking about.
Yep.
So even now, we've already had this kind of fun conversation. You see these amazing sights. You're able to do these things you never thought you could do, but you don't think you're going to make it.
Yeah, and you can't, and you're not going to see those sites
Yeah.
unless you do the climb.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You have to go through the hard parts.
It's and that's interesting. So when there is a biblical analogy for this when it says make level paths for our feet. You remember the Old Testament writers would often pray that prayer in a psalm, make level paths for our feet. And I realize why, because going uphill or downhill is hard. Believe it or not, even going downhill with a backpack is hard because you've got 30 pounds.
Yeah.
So now you've got this constant downward bam, 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 bam.
And I don't want to lose a step. I mean, I'm also, your muscles
gravity's pulling you.
It's
down.
pulling you, but you also know if you have a misstep.
Oh yeah, downhill is way more difficult for me.
Oh, she slows down more on downhills than on uphills.
Yeah.
Because you're having to pick your steps, and it's working muscles that you don't normally use because you're resisting gravity. Okay. So most of the time when we're walking, the best hiking is level. It's just it's wonderful when you get, but there's very little of that in the Sierras. Now in Alabama, you can get a little more of that where you just get long level paths. Right. But that's interesting in terms of the parallel to life. You can't see, it's like the Inca Trail. Unfortunately, you can see Machu Picchu without hiking to it, because they have a train and then a bus that'll take you up to the top of it. A little bit like Pikes Peak that has the cog railway, or you can drive up to it. But there is something about like a Mount Whitney where when you climb it and you get to the top of the tallest mountain, and you've been doing this for a week, but all along the way, there's spectacular views. But there's times where you're like, why am I doing this? This is crazy. It's just hard.
I wonder if there is an image there, though, of when you talk about Machu Picchu, of there's a short, easy way.
Yes.
If we think about a short, easy way to discipleship, where I think we want that, we want
we want
the easy way of becoming like Jesus.
Yes.
We want the view, but the work that it's going to be involved. But you get shaped in a different kind of way.
We want the train, not training.
Well, and
that was
also
good, wasn't it?
Yeah.
You see what I did
We can
there?
just end right
want
here.
A formula.
Yes.
You mean there's not a formula?
No, there is not.
Talk about formulas.
And you know,
Marie.
Gerald May really
Not
brings
Gerald
in.
Sitzer.
No,
Gerald May, not
Gerald
Sitzer.
May. He really talks about. He brings in some writings from John of the Cross, which he's the one who termed the
Dark Night of the Soul.
I didn't know that.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
But then he also
I thought it was Winston Churchill.
pulls in Teresa of Saint Teresa of Avila. Yes.
You guys are so smart. This is great. You can tell both of them went to seminary. I have no idea what we're talking about.
But they have termed these kind of this darkness that we all go through. But I was telling you just the other day, Bruce, that Gerald May's take on it is that we're kind of, the dark night of the soul does not have a beginning and an end. And a lot of times we can't discern when we are in it. We just know. It's not like, okay, yep, I'm in a dark night of the soul. And, there's not a formula to it. Sometimes you can't see it until you're past it. But he really contends that we're kind of, our relationship with God is kind of a dark night of the soul all the time. It's a growing and getting nearer, and that's always going to mean pain. Change and growth, it does mean that. It means
and
struggle and pain.
But and doesn't darkness, the image though, very powerful related, is uncertainty.
That's the only thing. It's just not being certain.
Yeah, and so, but what resonates deeply with what you just said is, this is where I think we've gotten so far off. We don't want the walk with Jesus to be a struggle
or uncertain.
Right, which it's those two things.
But it is, and all the time. In fact, God seems to do his best work when we are overwhelmed. I don't really know what to do here. I don't know where to go. I don't know how to fix this. I don't know how to get out of this.
Right, and you're quoting the Apostle Paul. In my weakness, his strength is shown, and therefore I'll glory in my weakness. I was just thinking, this fits into what we're saying. I was just thinking today about how good it is that God is able to carry the weight of his my relationship with him without me doing anything. I've been so exhausted in the past several weeks. I don't feel like reading the Bible. I don't feel like doing anything, and I don't feel like studying and normally I just, I enjoy that time, and I'm just not doing as much of it. And I realize God's walking with me. And I was preaching last Sunday and God was at work in that message. And I realize there's seasons where I feel strong. I just feel spiritually strong, and it's great. But I'm realizing in these seasons where I don't feel spiritually strong and I'm just physically, emotionally, spiritually exhausted, God is more than capable of carrying the weight of the whole relationship. Do you understand what I'm saying?
Yeah.
In other words, I think sometimes people, even in counseling, they feel like, well, I just feel like I'm far away from God right now, or I just feel like I'm distant. I'm like, it's okay. God's able to carry the weight of the relationship.
Exactly.
It's okay if you feel distant, because God's not. He's never distant. You might feel that. And I will tell you this, when you feel that, just allow God to carry it.
Exactly.
Allow God to carry the relationship. So it's like my prayers have been kind of short these days. It's been, I even realized I was praying last night for like 10 seconds and I just fell asleep. I'm like, that seems so dismissive.
Spontaneous sleep.
It seems so dismissive. But then I'm realizing, I've thought about this before, but if my son Zach, when he was little, and he's talking to me right before bed and he's just falls asleep while he's talking to me, I'm not going to be like, hey, Wake up, for heaven's sake. I'm not going to see that as disrespectful or dismissive. I'm just going to I'm going to pat his head and get some good rest. So I've been enjoying a season of seeing God at work in and through my life while I'm weak, tired, don't have much to give. And I'm still seeing God show up, and God always shows up, but do things and help me in counseling and help me in speaking. And it's been good.
I don't know if sometimes we kind of feel like we're, when things aren't clear, where they aren't certain, where something's wrong. I'm missing something part of the heart of God. When in reality, that's where God wants me to be.
Yes.
What I realize is when I am uncertain, overwhelmed, I'm having a conversation with someone, I have no idea what to say. I don't like that moment, but that's where God wants to engage. That we can do something together. God doesn't need me. He chooses to use delights in us. But I'm actually closer to, for me, I'm closer to him in the darkness, in the uncertainty. I don't know what to do with the situation. And I'm talking to him more. Like when I've got it under control, like when it's not, I've got all, I have the formula.
Roger, that's what one of the listeners just put a comment out there. When we think we're in control, quote unquote, we're less likely to feel our need for God.
Right.
Yeah.
No, exactly.
Right.
So it's actually in those moments, I'm getting closer to him, if you would. I've always loved the reality. Israel, what does it mean? Wrestler?
Yeah.
Means that the fundamental call isn't certainty. It isn't formula. It isn't having it all. Those are actually the times when I'm probably not praying as much. Those are the times, I'm doing pretty well on my own. God is actually far more of life is entering into the tension of, well, God says one thing here and he says one thing here. Like, how do I put that together? Or I'm having this conversation with someone, and what does love look like? I mean, here's somebody that I care about and they have this idea. I'm not sure that idea is healthy. Yeah. What's the best way to walk with them? But it's those moments where I'm behind myself whispering, God, what's the love look like here? How do I figure?
What does love look like here?
But I'm moving. It's that in the darkness, I'm getting closer to.
Yeah.
I can look and it can appear that God's not there in the darkness, but he's actually closer.
Right. Well, I think we're moving back to that place of childlike faith. Okay. So what does Jesus say? That, it's that childlike faith. And so.
Yeah. Unless you become like a child, you can't even enter the kingdom of heaven.
And so that to me is what we are always moving towards as mature disciples. Now we will go through a phase where we think, we are certain. I mean, we've all three been in places and we've done ministry together thinking we had it,
We're certain.
we know stuff, and come on, people, we just want you to know it too,
Like, one day you'll be like us.
One day you'll be like us.
And now we know, we're like, no,
we do a whole lot less.
Well,
we know less.
Partly wrong. Those two moments can be right next to each other.
Yes.
Where we're absolutely right about something and God's given us wisdom and insight. And then we're totally off on this other thing with Peter going, you are the Christ, the Son of the living God. And Jesus is like, yes, the Father's revealed that to you. And then he goes, but you're not going to die. And Jesus goes, no, that's Satan speaking. Right. I mean,
God was speaking.
It's literally
30 seconds ago. Satan is speaking now.
So it's that reality that, boy, I was, and I shared this Sunday because there's a Dr. John Walton who wrote the book, The Lost World of Adam and Eve, which is a fascinating read. But he said he was talking about some things that he knew were going to be controversial. And he said, I would ask all of us simply to approach this with intellectual humility and open-mindedness. And I thought, what a great way of saying it. Intellectual humility. It says, I don't know everything. Mm-hmm. And open-mindedness says, I want to learn. In other words, in the tension of I don't know everything, I also want to be open to. And I think the world that we grew up in, Roger, and maybe a little of your world too, it was sort of, you don't want to be open-minded. In fact, open-minded was considered a bad thing.
Like then anybody can put anything in there.
Every wind of doctrine. Now you're
open to compromise. Because the subtle belief is we weren't wrong on anything.
Right. And if we learn something new, But think about that going through kindergarten, elementary school. It was assumed that we would learn something new. They were constantly building on, we learned this, and then we learned this, and then we learned this. And apparently now there's new math, which, as I understand, is just like old math, except longer. I'm like, I owe that one to Nate Bargatze by that. It's just great.
But it's not just that we don't know. We think about learning is, okay, there's things we don't know, but part of learning is unlearning the things we think we know.
Yeah.
How much of Jesus' teaching was unlearning things?
Yes,
Even
you
with
have
Peter,
heard.
here's your idea about the Messiah.
Yes.
I need you to unlearn your idea about the Messiah.
Right.
But we can kind of chuckle at the disciples, how often that was happening, and not see
we're
that's
doing
it.
the
It's
same.
not just that we don't know everything, it's that we know something's wrong.
Oh yeah.
That we're
So there are certain things that we're sure of.
that we're sure of that are
that are
wrong.
wrong.
And that is the toughest place for intellectual humility
Mhm.
to come into play. It's not just that I don't know everything, it's also that I'm wrong on some stuff now.
Yeah.
And I've got to have that open-mindedness to
Mhm.
see where that might be.
Isn't that good? Yeah. It's not
Yeah.
just that I don't know everything. It's the willingness to say, and I'm wrong about some things. I just don't know what they are yet.
Yeah. Well, and I remember like when I first started going through this, untangling several years ago.
That's Marie's code word for deconstruction.
Well, I've got
Just
something
throwing
to
it out
say
there.
about that.
Do,
I think
not say it.
deconstruction is another word that has come up that really people, you're just going through a dark night. You're doubting things. You're losing
You're wrestling.
certainty, and it feels terrible.
Yeah, terrifying.
It's terrifying.
It can
It's
feel like a loss.
disorienting.
Right.
It's like, what in the world? You start questioning everything.
And sometimes it feels like a loss because it is a loss. It's a loss of something we thought we knew, but it's wrong. And so we can't hold on to it. And at a certain point, I realize I can't keep holding on to that because I'm now recognizing that it's wrong. So I have to I lose that in that sense. And it's a little bit, I'm in a season right now of just looking at this whole thing of necessary endings. Apparently there's a book out there. I haven't read it, but I've been
Yes.
using this a lot in counseling, and I've been using it a lot in my own life. There are necessary endings. For God to begin a new chapter in our life, it means the end of another chapter. And there's part of me sometimes that clings to the old chapter, whatever the last chapter was, because they had some really good
Really
parts
like
in
that
it.
chapter.
Then there's other chapters that I'm just ready to get the heck out of. And God's like, nope, this chapter's not done. You're going to stay in this chapter
There's
longer.
a prologue here.
Right. And I'm like, oh, this is a long chapter. All that to say, there's necessary endings in our theology if we're going to grow into what God wants to continue teaching us. In other words, as we continue to grow, because we talked about that a tremendous amount in church world. We want to grow as Christians, but what does that mean? Well, part of it is growing in knowledge and learning some things or unlearning some things. It's interesting. You pointed out how often Jesus was having them unlearn something. You have heard this, but I tell you. You've heard this, but I tell you.
Mm-hmm.
And then he'll even bring new light on certain passages that they'd already read.
Right.
He said, haven't you read? Multiple times. Well, haven't you read? And they're like, well, yeah, we read it. We just didn't read it like you did. We didn't take it that same way. So there's, necessary endings, even theologically, so that we can continue to grow.
Yes.
And that's hard on us.
Well, go ahead.
No.
I was just going to say part of the work that I want to do in the world is helping people get to that place. I mean, while I'm still getting to this place of knowing that when we, like you were describing, Bruce, you're so tired, you don't even have the energy to pray.
Yep.
You're not doing all the things.
Not checking any boxes
And
right now.
you know what? Getting to the place where we still are sure of God's delight in us.
Yes.
As sure as we are humanly
Yes.
possible can be. But that's what I want. Part of the work is I want people to understand better who we are, who God is.
Yeah.
True stories,
Mhm.
because this goes along with the unlearning. We have so much unlearning to do. We've
Yeah.
learned wrong things about God. So we have a very distorted perspective of him. And in that way, we
Mhm.
can't delight in the fact that he delights in us.
Yeah.
And that's I remember for me 20 something years ago when I finally embraced the love of God for me in my sin, with my sin, because I always sort of like God loves us in spite of our sin. Like there were these two separate sorts of things, but I realized in that season, no, God loves me with my sin. He does. And it's not that he wants me to stay in that, and that's why he lovingly brings discipline in my life, so I don't stay in that space. But he doesn't love me unless it's that scripture, the Lord delights. He disciplines those he delights in. And it's that thing of, yeah, God delights in me all of the time. And that is hard for us to embrace. We are so aware of success or what we would perceive as success and failure,
But that's the good news.
like God's more proud of us when.
And Gerald May, let me just throw this out and just blow your minds.
Not Gerald Setzer.
We always say God in me, or, he says, why don't, it's really God in me.
Yeah.
That's just one of those I keep.
Well, and there's a lot of those little prepositional things. Maybe I don't know if that's the right thing, but people will say, "Hey, when you're working for God," and I'm like, I always like to say working with God,
right?
Not working for God, because for God is almost this. I've got to do this stuff for God. I'm like, no, I'm just working with God.
Well, and if you say God and me, well, today I might choose to not be. Like it's like you can just leave him behind, but you can't.
It's always God in me.
God in me.
And God won't leave us behind.
Exactly.
Although
will not,
human beings sometimes leave other human beings behind.
Competitive, wanting to win.
Even though they're on the same team.
Gets lost.
Yeah.
I was thinking what you were saying, though, is the freedom that comes when I believe this thing about God that I'm totally loved. I was even thinking the powerful phrase this morning. I was thinking about this powerful phrase, Jesus speaking from the heavens. This is my beloved son.
Yes.
In the middle of, he's on earth and all this, and God's saying, this is my beloved son. But the reality, the apostles and others would teach this stunning, we're beloved children. Yes. And here's the thing, when I'm certain in that,
yes,
when I've unlearned an idea about God that I somehow have to win anything, I'm totally free now to love. I'm totally free to do good. Yes. It's the freedom of the amount of time I'm spending in the Bible, the amount of time I'm praying isn't that's not affecting how much I'm loved.
No.
I can now being good or doing good or serving is not trying to win anything with God. It can now flow out of, I can love as a beloved child. And this more than any other thing changed me behaviorally. Now, anyone who knows me knows there's tons of things that still need changing. But when righteousness stopped being a thing where I'm trying to, or I'm even trying to repay God.
Retain it.
I'm trying to retain something, or I'm trying to prove something, or I'm trying to even tell, I'm totally loved.
Yeah.
I'm totally forgiven. And so now I'm totally free to love. I could then more pursue righteousness or pursue the goodness or the heart of God, because no part of it was some secret way of actually keeping God loving me.
Right. Yeah.
Making me more beloved somehow. Or
it's the entering the rest that God talks about.
Ooh,
in the letters of Hebrews in
entering the
4.
Rest.
He what was it that Israel didn't do? They would not enter his rest. They would
keeping
not.
God loving me. That's a great statement.
That's what made that that's not rest.
It's not right.
No, I've got to keep God loving me.
That's
think
frantic.
Think about any relationship in our life. If we had to keep someone loving, if I had to keep Marlena loving me, I'm just thinking we've been married 38 years. You know what? Marlena chooses to love me every day. It's beautiful, but I don't feel like, oh, I'm out of Marlena's good graces. She won't love me today. No, there's a love is such a foundation for any relationship working well. If there's any relationship, like even a boss-employee relationship, where you're constantly feeling like, oh, I've got to make sure the boss is going to keep loving me. I mean, just think about the pressure of that.
Well, for me, the twist, the thing that I might, I'm going to challenge that. what hit?
Oh, let's use the word pushback. I've been wanting to use that for a while. That and doing my own
Let me
stunts.
push back on no.
Let me push back on that.
Well, here's my thought. What I had to thought is, I've been wonderfully married to my wife Joy for years and years. So what, almost 40 years, and I
And you're
realized
still earning your love.
no. But what frees me is not her love; it's the love of God.
Yeah.
Because her love could fail.
Sure.
Yes, yeah.
People are
exactly.
listening to us that had a spouse
Yes.
walk
Yeah.
out of their lives.
Yep.
That so I realized that could happen.
Yeah. He has unfailing love.
But the reason why I'm not desperate to keep loving me,
It's because you know God does.
because God does.
because you're already loved.
I'm
Exactly.
fully loved. So now I don't have to get into a rat race of trying to keep God loving me, but anybody else either.
Right.
That's the
That's
wonderful
why you
part.
can love well.
I can love better.
Yes.
And I still obviously want Joy to love me, and her love matters a great deal. But now I'm not desperate at the level of, if I lose that love, if that's the primary only love in my life, I'm devastated when it's gone. And Tim Keller
Yeah.
talks about this kind of, but the most fundamental love I have is love of God, which I can't lose. Nothing can separate me from the love of God.
Right.
All my loving, now I'm not desperate for anybody's love. I appreciate it. It matters. Oh, it's nice to be liked,
Yes.
loved, appreciated, but I'm not desperate for it because I'm certain of it in God.
And I love it. So I think that was more of a counterpoint. But let me come back to my point.
Right.
Since that was a counterpoint. But the beauty of, and this is where, because I realize we have listeners that have been in relationships or in relationships where that love failed
Yes.
and the person left. But what I was saying is there's a beauty when in a relationship with your spouse, when you both are in this place, we choose to love each other every day.
Yes.
It is the foundation for a healthy relationship because neither party's going, what's wrong? Is he okay? Is she okay? It becomes this very codependent. Marlene and I really are in a beautiful space of, we both love each other. We choose that every day. And I realize our love is failing. But the fact that we've chosen this space, it is a strong foundation for us to be able to enjoy each other. Because it's hard to enjoy people if you're like, are they mad at me today? Do they like me today? Are they going to love me? All of that kind of stuff. Just made me think of the Chicago song, Love Me Tomorrow. Chicago song. Love me tomorrow like today.
Okay.
It was that, but it's that question, will you still love me? There's another song.
Will you still love me tomorrow?
Sing it with us, Marie. Who sang that one?
No, that
The
one.
Everly Brothers.
No.
It is an old song. And it's this idea, tonight everything's beautiful, sweet. I see in your eyes, I'm the only one.
Yep.
But will you still love me tomorrow? The beautiful thing I realize is when I'm loving out of the freedom you just described, now I'm actually loving the person and not loving in other words,
Right.
I can be loving to keep you loving me, which actually takes an edge off of love.
Yes.
In other words, where I'm totally free to now, I'm not loving you to keep you loving me. I'm not trying not to make you mad so you'll keep loving me. I'm free now to just love you for who you are, to see your beauty, your glory, to bless you, to serve you, to do, because I don't have to have something back in return. It just makes love maybe its richest, most beautiful form.
Right. Agape love does not demand reciprocation. It's that I choose to love another person, whether they love me or not, whether they love me back or not.
Right.
Which is beautiful.
Yes.
Because if it demands reciprocation, it's a transaction.
Right.
Okay, I'll love you as long
Right.
as you love me. I'm going to do loving things,
And
but
at
my
the same
expectation is
time-
you're going to do loving things back.
It doesn't demand reciprocation, but it does. It is.
Or should it be reciprocity? I don't know which word is
Well,
better there. Reciprocity, reciprocation, both.
But
work.
I just want to say this because I was in a.
Speak it.
I was in a relationship that it kept me because I kept giving, and I don't need to expect anything, and I don't need to, I have the love of God, so that's enough. That does not ever mean that we should stay in a destructive relationship or, Just want to say that.
And that's
we
one
don't
of
need to stay in God doesn't ask us to stay in destructive relationships.
Well, and it's not that love only has one face, in the sense of,
Exactly.
because I do believe that love has boundaries, and love establishes
Yeah,
boundaries to protect relationships.
Yeah.
Right.
But
and to be loving towards someone is to say, wow, that hurt me. And to give that person an opportunity to say, you know what, you're right. And grow as well.
And to say loving. We can't keep doing that.
Yeah.
We can't keep doing that in our relationship. I mean, Marlene and I have to do that.
Yes.
Hey, this is not healthy for us. That we can't continue to communicate in that way or treat each other that way. That's part of. It's not demanding reciprocity, but we're demanding at that point. We want something better for our relationship that is healthy.
Yeah.
Because any relationship could become toxic.
Yes.
It just can.
Yes.
So you have to tell the truth.
You have to tell the truth.
Here's what I'm feeling. Here's what I'm sensing.
And love does that too.
Right.
Love brings life and calls forth growth, I believe.
Yeah. It was the proverb that talks about faithful is the rebuke of a friend.
The wounds of a friend.
The wounds of a friend.
And I know y'all would never mean that. I just always say that when I'm talking, because I know how some people think. They will hear that like I did for years and think, I just need to stay.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Yep.
Yeah.
And there's a tension. There's the tension, forgiveness and boundaries,
Yes.
tension of forgiveness and consequences, where again, this is one of those tensions of so many that God's calling us into, where we're not that we're living with more than one reality in play.
And you know what? That I'm glad you brought that up, because that book is by Desmond Tutu about forgiveness is really changing the way that I see forgiveness, because he says when somebody has hurt you, no longer there's not a restoration of the relationship. There's a renewal of the relationship. And he really unpacks that and says, because you've got to now relate to that person in a new way. It's a creative, life-giving act, So instead of using the word restoration, he prefers the word renewal. And I just really like that.
Yeah.
Because it can never be, the relationship can never be like it was.
Well, and the other thing with restoration, sometimes a relationship wasn't all that good. We don't want to restore it. You see what I'm saying?
That's what he's
we need
saying.
renewal. Sometimes we need a full-scale reconstruction.
Right.
I do have to share this before we end, because one of our listeners says, we all know that Marlena has the heavy load and Bruce just skates. The truth must be told. Thank you, Steve. I feel so affirmed somehow.
The honesty of our listeners, we love that.
Yes.
Just keep it coming, as long as it's directed towards Bruce.
Well. Wow.
Right.
I'm just kidding.
Steve has such insight.
I know. I'm like,
True.
wow. Okay.
Steve, we're gonna have to bring you on the Pastords
I love
at
you,
some
Steve.
point. It'll be great fun with your. So, what's our little ditty to finish today?
We usually end up there's some
A
kind
limerick,
of
a haiku.
Well, I mean, make it be about the dark night of the soul.
No, I was
Please.
thinking of
I don't have
when
one.
it
I'm
feels
not
like
limerick.
night, maybe things are going right.
That's perfect, because that's true.
Bruce was not as effusive.
Bruce does not like that.
That was good.
You can see it in his face.
It was-
There was a disappointment.
It was slow moving. I tried to hide it.
No.
That's really good, Roger. If you're in primary school.
Because
So-
Bruce is so far above us.
Yeah, really.
Next week, as I mentioned last week, I'll be gone. Even though I was here this week. I was so tired last week, I thought I was gone this week. But I'm not gone this week. As you can see, I'm here. So next week, I won't be here. Roger and Marie might be here. I don't know. I'll let them work that
I
out.
will not. I will be at my residency.
I'm going to be in a hot tub in Hot Springs in the Kern River Canyon next Wednesday.
Awesome.
I'm not even going to guess where I'm going to be.
I'll be in Wichita, Kansas.
Oh, that sounds awful.
Really?
Is that like purgatory?
My kids used to
I know.
live in Wichita.
Mhm.
I would.
What
that was
kind of?
So until next month.
It
Oh.
really